Let's practice some unit conversions together. For number 1, we have 5 pounds. And let's go ahead and convert that to ounces. Now, to begin, what we're going to do first is we're always going to take our initial amount of whatever we have, which is going to be 5 pounds. Pounds is abbreviated LBS. We're going to put that over 1 because that's the same thing. And then let's go ahead and see if we can multiply this by an equivalent unit conversion and use the identity property of multiplication. Now remember, we can multiply anything by 1 to keep the same value. So let's go ahead and multiply this by 1, but a specific version of 1. Now, we know that pounds and ounces, hopefully we can look it up and know that there are 16 ounces in a pound. So we can write that 1 pound is equal to 16 ounces. Now we're going to put that pounds on bottom just because we can cross cancel units, but I'll talk more about that in just one moment. But first, just know that 16 ounces is the same thing as 1 pound, so anything over itself is equal to 1. So we can multiply 5 pounds by 1 and it'll stay the same value. We're just going to be changing the units. Now we are multiplying fractions here, so keep in mind that we can cross cancel numbers, but we can also cross cancel units. So we see pounds on top and pounds on bottom, and they can cancel out with each other because pounds divided by pounds would just equal 1. Now I don't see anything else we can cancel out, so let's just go ahead and multiply. So on top we have 5 times 16. Now 5 times 16, I'm not going to write that out, but it's going to be 80. So it's going to be 80, and then what units do we have? It's just going to be ounces. So we have 80 OZ for ounces on top. And then what about the denominator? On bottom we have 1 times 1. That's just going to equal 1. So we can say that this is going to be equal to 80 ounces. Therefore, we can say that 5 pounds is equivalent to 80 ounces. Next, in number 2, we have 2.5 tons here. And we're going to go ahead and convert that to pounds. So just like in the last example, let's start by going ahead and writing the original value that we have, which is going to be 2.5 tons. I'm going to go ahead and just write 2.5 and put a capital T next to here and put it over 1, just because we know we're going to be multiplying by fractions. And then we have to figure out or look up how many pounds are in a ton or how many tons are in a pound. So I know that 2,000 pounds is equivalent to 1 ton, so I'm going to go ahead and use that conversion rate. And let's go ahead and specifically put the tons on bottom. I'm going to put 1 ton on bottom and know that's 2,000 pounds on top. So 2,000 LBS, that's going to go on top because we want our tons to cross cancel. Now 2,000 pounds and 1 ton are equivalent, so this is just really equal to 1 because it's the same thing on top of itself. And remember, we put the 1 ton on bottom here because we can cross out or cross cancel the tons and the tons here. Okay. Next, what we're going to do is we will go ahead and multiply if we can't cross cancel anymore. If we multiply 2.5 by 2,000, I believe that's going to be 5,000. So we're going to go ahead and say that this is going to be 5,000 on top. And what are our units? We have pounds, which is what we were looking for. So I'll put LBS. And what do we have in our denominator? Well, down on the bottom, we have 1 times 1, which is just equal to 1. So 5,000 pounds over 1 is just going to simplify down to saying that's going to be 5,000 pounds. So in conclusion, when we have 2.5 tons, that's going to be the same thing or equivalent to 5,000 pounds. Here's number 3. For number 3, we're going to go ahead and convert 39 feet to yards. To begin, let's go ahead and take that 39 feet and go ahead and write 39. I'll use FT for short. We're going to put this over 1 like we did in the last few examples. Let's go ahead and multiply by its conversion rate. Now, you can look it up or you can know hopefully that 3 feet are in 1 yard. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a fraction bar here to write this ratio. And I'm going to put the feet on bottom because there are 3 feet in 1 yard. But keep in mind that we want things to cross cancel. So put YD for yards here. Now remember, 1 yard is equivalent to 3 feet, so really just multiplying by 1 here. So this is the identity property of multiplication. Now, why did I put feet on bottom? Well, I wanted these two feet on top and bottom to cross cancel with each other. But what else can we actually cross cancel? Well, it looks like we can also cross cancel this 3 and 39 because their GCF is 3. If we divide 3 by 3, that's going to equal 1. And if we divide 39 by 3, that'll be 13. Okay, so what are we actually left with here? Well, on top, we're going to go ahead and multiply 13 by 1. 13 by 1 is going to be 13. And what kind of units do we have left on top? It's just going to be yards. So I'm going to go ahead and put YD for yards. And then let's go ahead and put a fraction bar here on the bottom, 1 times 1. That's going to equal 1. So this is 13 yards over 1, which is really just 13 yards. So what did we just find? 39 feet is equivalent to 13 yards. For number 4, let's go ahead and convert 22 pints to quarts. So let's start off by taking this 22 pints. I'm going to use 22 and put a PT for pint and put that over 1, just like we did in the last few examples. Let's see if we can multiply this by a conversion factor that's equal to 1 using the identity property of multiplication. Now, if we want to know, we need to know that there are going to be 2 pints in every quart. So let's go ahead and say that on top we're going to put quarts. So I'm going to put 1 quart on top is equal to 2 pints on bottom. Again, you can flip this upside down, but we do want the pints to cross cancel with each other. So be sure to put the units diagonal from each other, or 1 on top and 1 on bottom. So again, 1 quart and 2 pints are equivalent, so this is really just essentially multiplying by 1. And we can see that these pints will cross cancel with each other. But also, it looks like we can find a GCF between 2 and 22. They're both divisible by 2, so 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 22 divided by 2 is going to be 11. Okay, so now that we've simplified a little bit here, let's go ahead and see what we can multiply. On top, 11 times 1, that's going to equal 11. So we're going to put 11 quarts on top. And then on the bottom here, we have 1 times 1. That's going to just equal 1. So we have 11 quarts over 1, but we can just simplify that down to saying this is 11 quarts. Okay, so 22 pints is equivalent to 11 quarts. Let's check out number 5. For 5, we have 4.5 pounds. And let's go ahead and convert that to ounces. So just like in the last few examples, let's take 4.5. Pounds for short is LBS. Let's go ahead and put that on top of 1. And let's see what we're going to multiply this by. So you can look it up, but there are 16 ounces in 1 pound. So let's go ahead and put a fraction bar over here. And the ratio is going to be 16 to 1. So I'm going to put 1 pound on bottom. And I'm going to put 16 ounces or 16 OZ on top. Again, 16 ounces is equal to 1 pound, so this is really just a ratio that's equal to 1, or a unit ratio here. And then we can see here that the pounds are going to cross cancel with each other nicely. So all we really have to do is multiply this 4.5 by 16. That's going to be, let's see, 16 times this 4.5. I believe that's going to equal 72. If you need to write that out, feel free to write out that work. So that's going to be 72, and then the only units we have here are ounces. So let's go ahead and put OZ next to it for ounces. And in the bottom, we have 1 times 1, which is just 1. So we have 72 ounces over 1, which is just going to be 72 ounces. All right, so 4.5 pounds, that's equal to 72 ounces. Here's number 6. For number 6, let's go ahead and convert 3 quarts to gallons. So to begin here, let's go ahead and take this 3 quarts. I'm going to write 3 QTS for quarts. That's going to be over 1 because we're going to always start it off putting it over 1, so we have a fraction. And what's the conversion here? Well, there are 4 quarts in a gallon, so let's go ahead and put a fraction bar here. And I'm going to put 4 QTS or 4 quarts, and that's going to be in 1 gallon. So 1 GAL I'm going to use for the top. Now this unit conversion is just equal to 1 because 1 gallon is equivalent to 4 quarts, so we're not going to be changing any values here. Now why did I put the quarts on bottom in that unit ratio? Well, I wanted these quarts to cross cancel, so that's going to work out nicely here because we planned that. And then on top we have 3 times 1, that's going to be 3. And then our units on top is just going to be gallons, so let's write 3 GAL. And then in the bottom we have 1 times 4 and nothing else, so 1 times 4 is equal to 4. So what can we say here? We can say that this is going to be 3/4 of a gallon. This is one way to put our equivalency here, or we can turn this into a decimal. We could also say 0.75 gallons. So 3/4 of a gallon is 3 quarts. So I'm going to go ahead and just write it as a decimal, but feel free to write it as a fraction as well. For number 7, we have 5 quarts. And we're going to go ahead and convert that to gallons. So very similar to the last example. So hopefully you can kind of apply what you did over there. So 5 quarts, let's go ahead and put that over 1. And let's go ahead and multiply that by a conversion here. So we can use the same one as the last example. So let's go ahead and put 4 quarts or 4 QTS on bottom. That's equivalent to 1 gallon. So put 1 gallon on top. Now 1 gallon is equal to 4 quarts, so we're really just multiplying by 1, so we're not changing the value, just the units. These quarts, as we planned, will cross cancel since we strategically put them diagonal from each other, 1 on top, 1 on bottom. On top here we have 5 times 1, that's going to equal 5, and then our units here is just going to be gallons, so let's go ahead and put GAL. And then what do we have on the bottom here? Well, it looks like we have 1 times 4, that's going to equal 4 and nothing else. if we go ahead and write this as an improper fraction or a mixed number, either way is fine. I'm gonna go ahead and say this is gonna be 1 1/4 gallons. Okay, or you could also say as a decimal, this would be equivalent to 1.25 gallons. All right, so 5 quarts is equivalent to 1.25 gallons or 1 1/4 gallons. Here's number 8. For number 8, we have 13 pints, and we're gonna go ahead and convert that to quarts. So right off the bat, let's go ahead and take this 13 pints, right, 13 pt, s for plural, I guess, and then put it over 1. Let's go ahead and multiply this by a conversion factor. So we know, hopefully, or we can look it up, that there are 2 pints in a quart. So I'm gonna go ahead and put 2 pints on bottom and then put 1 quart on top. So again, be strategic with where you place things so they can cross cancel. So if we go ahead and set this up, we can multiply this by 1, use the identity property since 1 quart is equal to 2 pints, so this is just equal to 1. Now the pints and the pints will cross cancel as we have planned, and in the numerators of these ratios we have 13 times 1, which is just going to be 13, and then we just have 1 unit of quarts, which is what we were hoping to get, or planning to get rather. So we have 13 quarts, and underneath here we have 1 times 2. 1 times 2 is going to be 2. So we can also go ahead and rewrite this. Now 13 divided by 2 goes in 6 times with 1 left over. So we can say this is 6.5 quarts. That's one way of writing this. Or we can also say maybe this is going to be 6.5 quarts. Okay, so 13 pints is equivalent to 6.5 quarts. For number 9, we have half a mile or 0.5 miles. And let's go ahead and convert that to feet. Okay, so let's start off with 0.5. I'm going to use mi to abbreviate miles, and that's going to be over 1, just like in the other ones. So let's start off by taking this original value of 0.5 miles, or half a mile. You can turn it to a fraction if you want instead. Let's put it over 1, just like we've been doing with all the other ones here. And let's know our conversion factor here. So for 1 mile, I'm going to put the mile on bottom. It's going to be equal to 5,280 feet. So that's going to go on top. Now again, 5,280 feet are in 1 mile, so this whole fraction here is really just equal to 1, so we're not changing any values. We put the miles on bottom in it just so we could cross cancel with the miles here. And here we're just going to be taking this 5,280 and multiplying it by 0.5. So that's really saying dividing it by 2 also. So you can either multiply by 0.5 or divide by 2. If you can't do that in your head, you should be writing this down, so you should have some calculations there. Now I know that's going to be 2,640, so I'm going to write 2,640, and then we have feet as our units here, so just go ahead and put feet. And then what's that on top of? Well, it looks like we just have 1 times 1 on the bottom, which is 1. And then so we can just go ahead and simplify this and say this is going to be 2,640 feet. That's going to be what half a mile is. So let's go ahead and put that right over here, 2,640. Here's number 10. In number 10, we have 1.5 miles. And let's go ahead and convert that to yards. So let's take this initial 1.5 miles, 1.5, use mi to abbreviate miles. Let's go ahead and put it over 1, just like in all the other ones. And let's know and see, do we know how many yards are in a mile? If not, look it up. I know that if we have 1 mile, let's go ahead and put that on the bottom. We want to get rid of it, so make sure it's diagonal. There's 1,000, I'll put it right up here, 1,760 yards in 1 mile. If you didn't know that, you could definitely go to feet first and then go to yards if you know that a little bit better. And so this is how many yards are in a mile. So this whole thing is really just equal to 1. We're just looking to convert the units. The miles here will cross cancel. And let's go ahead and see what this is equal to when you go ahead and multiply. Now on the top here, we have to multiply 1.5 by 1,760. So you should go ahead and write out that calculation. And what you are going to get when you multiply that is going to be 2,640. And we only have one set of units here, which is yards. So let's go ahead and put yards next to it. And this is going to be on top of what? Well, 1 times 1 is equal to 1. So that's all we got there. And then we can go ahead and just simplify this to say this is going to be 2,640 yards. That's how many yards are in 1.5 miles. So 2,640. Here's number 11. For number 11, let's start with 17 yards and convert that to feet. Okay, so let's take this 17 yards. 17, I'll use YDS to abbreviate yards. I'm gonna put that over 1, and let's multiply by that conversion here. So for yards, I know for 1 yard, that's gonna be equal to 3 feet. So put the yards on bottom and the feet on top. 3 feet is equal to 1 yard, so this is really just equal to 1 using the identity property. Now the yards and yards will cross cancel as we have planned it to. And on top, let's go ahead and multiply 17 times 3, that's going to be 51. And then on top we also have feet here, so that's going to put FT for feet. And then underneath that, let's go and see that's going to be 1 times 1, that's going to equal 1. So 51 feet over 1, we can just say that's going to be 51 feet. So if you have 17 yards, that is equivalent to 51 feet. For number 12, we have 25,000 pounds, and we're going to go ahead and convert that to tons. Okay, so let's take this 25,000 and let's put LBS for that abbreviation for pounds. Let's go ahead and put that over 1. And let's go ahead and multiply that by the conversion. So we have pounds on top, so let's go ahead and put pounds on bottom. Now go ahead and look it up, or hopefully if you remember from earlier, there are 2,000 pounds in 1 ton. So I'm going to put 1 and I put a capital T for tons on top. So again, 1 ton is equal to 2,000 pounds, so these are equivalent to each other. If we go ahead and multiply, these pounds are going to cross cancel just like we were hoping to. Now when we are cross canceling, keep in mind that anything that ends in a 0 can be divisible by 10. So we can go ahead and cross off 1 0 from the top and the bottom, dividing them both by 10. But if you cross off 2 zeros from both, we're dividing them both by 100. If you divide both sides, top and bottom by 3 zeros, or we're really divided by 1,000 on top and bottom. And so really we can make these numbers a lot smaller pretty quickly here. So we can go ahead and set this equal to, this is 25 times 1. 25 times 1 is just going to be 25. And we just have this T, and that's going to stand for tons. So 25T over, and on bottom we have 1 times 2, and that's going to be equal to 2. Now what is this equal to? Well, 25 divided by 2 is going to be 12.5. So we can say this is going to be 12.5 or 12.5 tons. Again, you could also say as a fraction if you'd like to, and say this is going to be 12.5 tons, but either one is okay. Let's go ahead and put 12. I'm going to write 12.5. I think I've been using decimals earlier, so I'll keep them as decimals. For number 13, we have 45 grams, and we're going to go ahead and convert that to milligrams. Okay, so let's go ahead and take that 45 milligrams. I'm going to say this is going to be 45 G. I'm going to go ahead and use G for grams, and we're going to put that over 1. Let's go ahead and multiply this by its conversion factor. So 1 gram is going to be how many of these milligrams? Now 1 gram is equal to 1,000 milligrams, so let's go ahead and put the 1G on bottom for 1 gram. Let's go ahead and put 1,000 of these milligrams, or mg, we'll put that on top. Now again, 1,000 milligrams is equivalent to 1 gram, so this is just equal to 1. These grams are going to cross cancel with each other, just as we were hoping to and planning to. And so on top we have 45 multiplied by 1,000, so that's going to be 45,000. And then we have milligrams, so that's mg, so we have 45 milligrams. And underneath that, what do we have? We just have a 1 times 1, which is just equal to 1. And this is just going to simplify down to saying that 45 grams is equal to 45,000 of these milligrams, because milligrams are smaller. So let's go ahead and write 45,000. In number 14, we have 5.1 kilometers. And let's go ahead and convert that to meters. Now, let's go ahead and first take this 5.1 kilometers. I'm going to use km for kilometers and put that over 1 for starters. And let's go ahead and multiply that by its conversion factor here. So what's 1 kilometer equal to? We'll put the kilometer on bottom because we want to get rid of it. And that's equal to 1,000 meters. So we're going to go ahead and put 1,000 m or 1,000 meters on top. Now again, 1,000 meters is equivalent to 1 kilometer, so this is just equal to 1, so we can multiply this and not change the value, just the units. These kilometers are going to cross cancel as planned. Now multiplying this 5.1 by this 1,000, we really just move the decimal over 3 times to the right. So we'll put 5, 1, and have 2 zeros on after that. And our unit here is going to be meters, which is what we're looking for. So we have 5,100 meters, and that's over 1, because 1 times 1 here is just equal to 1. Simplifying this a bit, we can just go ahead and say this is going to be 5,100 meters, and that's going to be how many meters are in this 5.1 kilometers. In number 15, we have 4,300 meters, and we're going to go ahead and convert that to kilometers, okay? So what we're going to do here is take this 4,300 meters, we'll take that to start, and we're going to put that over 1. Let's go ahead and multiply that by its conversion, right? So just like from the last example, we know that 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. So this time we're going to put 1,000 meters on the bottom and then put 1 kilometer on the top. All right, so again, 1 kilometer is equal to 1,000 meters. That's just equal to 1. We put the meters on bottom this time because we'd like them to cancel out, so we're just left with kilometers. Now on top here, we're going to have 4,300 and multiply that by 1. That's going to be 4,300. We only have kilometers left as our units, so we better write those. km for kilometers. And then underneath here, we have 1 that's multiplied by 1,000. So you could either cross cancel earlier or do it now. So it's okay if you don't do it till later. But I'm going to put 1,000 on the bottom. Now, if we go ahead and divide top and bottom both by 100, they're both going to lose 2 zeros here. And if we do that, we're going to have 43 over 10. Now, anything divided by 10 just moves the decimal over once to the left. So that's going to be 4.3 kilometers. So 4.3 kilometers is equivalent to 4,300 meters. Here's number 16. In number 16, we have 7,658 grams. And we're going to go ahead and convert that to kilograms. Now, we're going to put the 7,658. I'll put G for grams. Let's go ahead and put this over 1 so we have a fraction. And let's go ahead and multiply this. Now, there are 1,000 grams in a kilogram. We want the grams to cancel out. So let's put the 1,000 down here, 1,000 G for grams. And then that's going to be equivalent to 1 of these kilograms or 1 of these kgs. Again, this is our unit conversion, which is really just equal to 1. So we're not going to be changing the value when we multiply. The units will change though because these grams will cross cancel. Okay. Now let's go ahead and multiply this out. Looks like we can't really cross cancel much, maybe by 2, but we're divided by 1,000. It's actually pretty nice. So 7,658 times 1 is still going to be 7,658. And then we have kg as our units here. So let's keep the kg. And that's going to be on top of what? Well, on the bottom we have 1 times 1,000. So let's go ahead and put 1,000. Okay. Now, if we want to go ahead and simplify this, when you divide by 1,000, you just move the decimal over 3 times to the left. So it starts here, moves 1, 2, 3 times to the left. So this is going to be 7.658 kilograms, or 7 and 658 thousandths of a kilogram. I'm going to write 7.658. In number 17, we have 70 miles. And we're going to go ahead and convert that to kilometers, which we're going to have to round a little bit. So we're going to go to the 10th place when we do that. First, what we're going to do is start by writing 70 miles, or 70 mi over 1. Okay. Then we're going to go ahead and multiply this by a conversion factor. Now, there's 2 that you'd want to know. Either you could go with knowing that 1 mile is the same thing as about 1.61 kilometers roughly, or you could say that 1 kilometer is equal to about 0.62 miles. So either one is going to be okay depending on which one you want to go with. Now, I'm going to go ahead and use the one I prefer, which you can choose to if you would like to. So I'm going to go ahead and say that 1 kilometer, I'm going to put 1 kilometer on top here. And I know that's roughly equal to 0.621 to the thousandths place. So I know it could be more accurate, but I think that's pretty good. So it's about 0.621 or 62% of a mile. That's what 1 kilometer is. All right, so this is a unit conversion. Again, there is another one you could use if you wanted a per 1 mile. That's also okay. What's going to happen here by putting miles on bottom is that these will cross cancel. And what we're going to be able to do on top here is just multiply this 70 multiplied by 1. That's going to be 70. And the only units we have on top here are kilometers. So we can just go ahead and write kilometers, or km. And then underneath here, we have 1 multiplied by 0.621. So we have 0.621 on the bottom of this fraction, okay? At this point, again, you're not gonna be able to get a perfect number here, so we're gonna put this approximation. I've already approximated already, so I guess I shouldn't have used the equal sign above there. But if you go ahead and take a calculator and do 70 divided by 0.621, you're gonna get roughly that this will be 112.654, and that's gonna be kilometers. Okay. Now the directions do say round to the nearest tenth, so it's good that we have at least more than the tenths. So rounded to the nearest tenth, we're going to say this is 112.7 kilometers. In number 18, we have 34 inches. And we're going to go ahead and convert this to centimeters. So if we go again across our conversions from metric to standard or metric to US, it's going to be a little bit tricky. So we have to make sure we do some rounding as well. Starting off, let's take this 34 inches, 34 IN for inches I'm going to use and put that over 1. Now there's 2 conversions we could use depending on which unit you're looking for. So if you want to know, you could look it up, but 1 centimeter is approximately 0.394-ish inches, again rounding to the nearest thousands place, or we can say that 1 inch is equivalent to 2.54 centimeters roughly. So now between the two, I'm going to go ahead and use that second one because I know that one off the top of my head. I'm going to put 1 inch on bottom here, and 1 inch is about 2.54 centimeters. So I'm going to put 2.54 cm. And so again, this is an equivalency, so this is just equal to 1. And then we can go ahead and cross cancel these inches with each other. And so what are we actually multiplying here? On top, we have to multiply 2.54 by this 34. And again, you should use write this out by hand so you can go ahead and practice doing your calculations, doing that multiplication. But 34 multiplied by this 2.54, that's going to be about 86. Again, I shouldn't be using that equal sign, so 86.36. And then we have centimeters here. So I'll go ahead and put centimeters. And then on the bottom here, let's go ahead and put, we have 1 times 1, which is just equal to 1. And then we can go ahead and convert this, or just put it as a whole number, I guess, or not over 1, I mean to say. So 86.36 centimeters. So we're gonna put 86 point, what, if we round to the nearest tens place, it's gonna be 86.4. So that's gonna be an approximation here because we rounded. All right, for 19, let's go ahead and go from 35 pounds. And we're gonna go to kilograms here, okay? So for starters, let's take this 35 pounds, 35 lbs for that abbreviation. Let's go ahead and put that on top of 1. And if we go ahead and multiply this by a conversion, we need to know how many pounds are in a kilogram or how many kilograms are in a pound. Now, I'd like the pounds to cross cancel, so I'm gonna put pounds on bottom, but you can look it up. But there, I know roughly that 1 kilogram is about 2.2-ish pounds, right? But you could also use 1 pound is equal to about 0.454 kilograms. Now the one I know I'm gonna put here off the top of my head, so I'm gonna put the kilogram on top, so 1 kg. Since we're gonna be converting to kilograms, we don't want that to cancel out, and it actually doesn't have anything to cancel out with. But on the bottom, we're gonna have 2.20, I guess 4, and that's going to be lbs. Okay, so that's going to be an approximation. So again, this is just equal to 1, and we can see that the units of pounds and pounds can cross cancel here. So when we go ahead and multiply this 35 by 1 on top, that's just still going to be 35. And then we have the units of kilograms, so it's going to be kg. Okay, and that's going to be on top of what? Well, on the bottom we have 1 multiplied by 2.204, so that's going to be 2.204. Okay, now you can go ahead and use a calculator to divide this since it's going to be a little bit messy, and this should come out to roughly 15.87. Let's see, 876 if you go to the thousands place. And so if we round this to the hundredths place, this should be, or sorry, tenths place rather, this would be about 15.9 of these kilograms. Finally, for number 20, we have 20 kilometers. And we're going to go ahead and convert that to miles. Okay, so let's start with this 20 kilometers, 20 km, and let's just put that over 1 and multiply by a conversion here. Okay, so how many kilometers are in a mile, or how many miles are in a kilometer? I know 1 kilometer is about 0.621 miles, or we can say 1 mile is about 1.609 kilometers. So either one is going to be fine, whichever one you prefer. This time I guess I'll use 1 mile on top. Okay, we don't want that to cancel out with anything. Then we can put 1.609 kilometers on the bottom. Okay, so that's an equivalent. So again, this is just one option, but this is equal to 1, so we can go ahead and multiply by it. These kilometers are going to cross cancel nicely as we have planned. And on top, we have 20 times 1, that's just going to equal 20. And we have our units of miles, so 20 mi for miles. And then on the bottom here, we have 1 multiplied by 1.609, so we have 1.609. Okay, now if we go ahead and throw this into a calculator and take 20 and divide by 1.609, you're going to get approximately 12.427, right? That's to the thousands place, so rounding this to nearest tenths place, we're going to say this is about 12.4 miles. So 20 kilometers is about 12.4 miles. Divide these both by 4. Kind of makes sense because a 3.1 miles is a 5K. If you've ever ran a 5K, it's about 3.1 miles. So there you have 20 different practice problems on unit conversions. Each time we multiplied using the identity property, which means we're multiplying by 1, but this version of 1 is a little bit trickier because they have different units. So the name of the game is to try to cross-cancel those units and get to a different unit. So going metric to metric and US to US is a little bit easier, and going from one to the other can be a little bit more tricky. Calculators are definitely helpful. So hopefully you found this video helpful in learning your unit conversions a little bit better. If you found the video helpful, please consider giving it a thumbs up. And as always, keep up the great work that you're already doing, and I'll see you in the next one.